Welcome to today's episode of the 1873 Speaker Series. My name is John Douglas. I am from the class of 1964, and we've been hosting these sessions for probably about a year and a half, related initially to the bicentennial, sesquicentennial, that is, the 150th anniversary of the university. But the series is designed to allow the alumni and others to be able to recollect and reconnect with former classmates, former instructors and professors, but it's primarily a way to communicate and preserve the history of the university. And today I am more than privileged to introduce somebody to you that was here only for 1 year, unfortunately for us, but he was here his freshman year and was part of the Corps Cadets, and that was back about 1957. He was a student from South Georgia. I'm going to let him talk about that, but he went on to join the Marine Corps and as a recipient of the Medal of Honor, the only Medal of Honor recipient to this point from the University of North Georgia. So I'd like to welcome retired Major General from the Marine Corps, James Livingston. Jim, we appreciate you coming and being with us today. It's an honor to have you here on campus. We just got through participating in a part of the Boar's Head weekend where we had the review of the Cadet Corps, the Boar's Head Cade. But last night you gave such a motivational speech to the Corps. It was probably the longest standing ovation we've had of any speaker to kick off the Boar's Head weekend. But anyway, what we'd like to do is just to have a kind of an informal chat. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself as far as where you came from and what high school you went to and where you grew up, and then how you ended up at North Georgia.
Well, John, thank you for making this trip a very delightful trip. It's been a great 2 days, and just to see what has happened to the brigade, what has happened to the University of North Georgia, is a remarkable sort of undertaking. And I congratulate all the people who've been involved in this all throughout the years. And like I say, you're looking at the brigade today and seeing what's been done, I tell you, you can all be very proud of yourself. And as a fellow Georgian, I'm very proud of all of you. Well, I grew up in Telfair County, Georgia, down very close to McRae Lumber City, and this was days when I was living on a large farm. My dad had a large farm down in that area, and grew up as a farm boy, and I learned to work hard real fast as a youngster growing up, and attended a very small high school called Lumber City High School, and there was only 26 graduates from the class, and all of them are gone except for a couple of guys and a couple of girls, so, you know, remember all those with fondness, but it did prepare me for what I need to be prepared for in terms of academic life. And we had a dear friend recommend to my dad that we consider North Georgia College, and probably the greatest thing ever happened to me in my life is the opportunity to come back then with North Georgia College. And I reflect on that in a very positive sense. It created some of the fundamentals of life values and life's commitment, and most of all, discipline, about how you need to live your life and how you need to prepare yourself if you're going to be successful in college. And let me assure you, I would never have been successful in college if it hadn't been for this 1 year at North Georgia College. What I learned about myself, what I learned about what I needed to know and needed to reinforce all through my life, those values of understanding how to live your life, how to be successful in your life, how to achieve in your life, and all those things were important, I think, and bring me back here today to learn that first year at North Georgia. And it was a remarkable journey, and I have no regrets, and I'm just sorry that you didn't have an engineering degree program back in those days, otherwise I would have stayed at North Georgia. But as a young kid, like I say, who grew up on a farm, and where I'm at today, and I never thought back in those days, who would ever thought you'd be returning to North Georgia in this many years as a guest speaker in front of the Corps Cadets.
Yeah.
It's just sort of a life journey, and like I said, it all began, the highlights of it began in North Georgia.
Right. Well, I believe you mentioned to me at some point, you referenced the farm, but your dad had a large farm that had chickens and hogs. And
My dad was sort of an entrepreneur, pioneer, if you will. He brought some of the largest chicken farms to Georgia back when it was just beginning. The big laying industry was moving to Georgia. They making chicken to be fried was moving to Georgia. Pig farming was moving to Georgia in mass production sort of sense.
right.
And he was sort of a pioneer in that.
Yeah.
And like I say, I learned a lot of the values of hard work and business and what life was all about by getting up when I started 4 years old. He would roll me out at 4 o'clock in the morning. And believe it or not, just for the benefit of those who are listening, that was before tractors.
Oh,
And we had about 15 or 16 mules, and guess who pumped the water for the mules?
wow.
So I went through all those lovely experiences coming up.
Well, that's a long way.
Yeah, so yeah.
To Dahlonega.
Yeah, I tell you.
How'd you get up here?
Well, like I say, Sprinter Wives suggested that, and my dad took the suggestion, brought me up here, if I recall correctly, and we reviewed what was going on, and we realized that I was not prepared for Georgia Tech or University of Georgia in terms of experiences and the kind of curriculum. I needed a very disciplined environment to adapt to the new facts of college life, if you will. And North Georgia was represented every facet of that. You know, the military facet, the discipline facet, but also, you know, helping a young kid grow up. They didn't have a lot of great experiences in that kind of life.
Yeah.
So, you know, North Georgia was a perfect choice for me.
Super, super. Well, we've had an opportunity for you to be here for a couple of days, and we toured the campus.
Yeah.
What was your impression of the way it used to be and the way it is today?
Well, I tell you, the impression of North Georgia, you know, infrastructure means a lot. But the most important part of a college is the commitment, the professionalism of the people, the curriculum here in the college, but most of all, the outcome. And the outcome, even when you had fewer buildings and fewer students, was superb here at North Georgia. Yeah. And I don't see any diminished quality in that outcome. And that's the reason I applaud you. The more young people, like I say, you're up to almost 20,000 students now in contrast to what we had.
Right.
And the more people you can touch with this North Georgia experience, the state of Georgia is better for it, they're better for it, most of all, the country's better for it.
Yeah.
So this college, like I say, is an example for the country, and I've been around all over the country, been to a lot of colleges, but just something about the feel, the commitment, just the energy, and I listened to your president this morning, and just listen to the energy in this environment up here. It's very positive, and I think every young person comes away from here is such a better person, and can contribute so much more to our America. So what y'all are doing up here is remarkable.
That's great. Well, the only thing that the general asked me when I asked him if he could come up and speak, he said if we can go to the Smith House. So we went to the Smith House for lunch yesterday. How did that stack up the way you remember it?
Well, I tell you what, the best fried chicken in the world is at the Smith House. And so that's the reason I always, when I come to Alumni, get the Smith House, bring me a whole platter of fried chicken.
There you go.
And just the environment at Smith House, you know, that sort of country feel where everyone dips out of the same dish and all that. It's just very very telling.
Yeah.
You know, we got so many good traditions in the country that Smith House represents. Some of the best.
Food.
Yeah.
And we had
the whole area up here is remarkable.
Yeah, it's unbelievable what's happened to Dahlonega and Lumpkin County in particular. Even though the Dahlonega campus is just one of 5 campuses, but it's certainly the headquarters where where life began as far as the core is concerned.
Well, I remember when there were the big things up here were laundries, barbershops, the movie theater, and one restaurant.
Right.
And what it is today is just a remarkable sort of.
Said
everyone can be proud of.
You shared you always went to the Holly Theater.
Yeah, I didn't care what the movie was, but I went to the Holly Theater.
Which was close to the Triangle, which you also shared.
Well,
you spent a little time on.
I got probably 4 or 5 bricks down where the old Triangle was. And I learned to be a good walker around the Triangle.
Right.
And every time I'd go out on the parade deck, I'd figure, go through an inspection, I'd say, how many hours is this gonna cost me?
Well, you referenced the fact that you transferred and you transferred to Auburn. Tell us a little bit about your experience transferring down there and how you transitioned eventually into the Marine Corps.
Well, like I say, I wanted to be an engineer, and unfortunately, they didn't have a curriculum here, and so I decided to choice between Georgia Tech, and I won't talk about Georgia Tech, but I'll talk about Auburn. Went down to Auburn, and it just was such a positive environment. But I guess my biggest mistake is I pledged to fraternity the first quarter, and I almost became a farmer down in Georgia because I didn't do very good in the first quarter. But I also always liked North Georgia, a very positive environment, so I graduated in '62. But as a part of this trip through Auburn, I got drafted in 1961, and that could have been deferred. You only had to take so many hours back in those days, and you could be deferred from Vietnam. But I decided I think it was my time to do my duty, so I volunteered to go in the Marine Corps.
Wow.
And I spent 2 boot camps and 1 summer up in Quantico, Virginia, and got commissioned in 1962, and was just going to be a reserve officer. Stayed for 3 years and practice engineering, obviously, but I got wrapped up in the Vietnam War, and John, as you're aware of, I spent 3 tours in Vietnam, and I'm one of the few people probably you can say they bookended Vietnam. I was there in '63, '64, '67, '68 for the Tet Offensive, and also I did the evacuation of Saigon in 1975. So I was there at the beginning and at the end.
So you actually were in the Marines really kind of as the Vietnam War was beginning to start.
Yeah.
And so your first tour you were a platoon leader?
I was a platoon leader my first tour, and primarily off of the Mang and aboard Navy ships. We were prepared to react if something, we were directed down by the National Command Authority to go ashore in Vietnam, but we all went ashore is a couple of young lieutenants went ashore just to observe. Then I went back in '67, '68, and very shortly got wrapped up with the North Vietnamese in the Tet Offensive in the battle where I became the recipient of the Medal of Honor. Then the third time, my wife kept saying, "You're not going back to Vietnam," and I was going to Okinawa. I called her up after 14 days in Okinawa, and I said, "I guess where I'm going." So they put me aboard the Blue Ridge, a big command ship, and I got involved with planning the evacuation of Phnom Penh and also the evacuation of Saigon, or really South Vietnam.
Right.
And also ultimately got involved with the takedown of the Maguez, the ship that was captured by the Cambodians. It was on the way to the Koh Tang Island, which was the last fight of the war, but missed it by a couple hours.
Which was amazing. But one of the things I think when you were responsible for the evacuation, you were a major at that
I was
point.
a major, yeah. I was got caught in country, and believe it or not, I was in civilian clothes, which was not a good way to be there, because the first guy had been CIA than me.
Right.
But I was handed the execute message for Operation Freaker Win, and I called up the Regimental Commander, Al Gray, who later became the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and suggested this option because we had planned options for the evacuation of Vietnam from just the Americans to up to 2 million Vietnamese.
Wow.
And so it was a major planning effort, to get all the Navy ships, all the Marine forces, everyone, all the helicopters in position. So we planned off all that, and I suggested an option, and they agreed, and the task force commanders, both of the Marine and Navy, agreed with the option.
Okay.
So that's the option we executed, and I was on the last helicopter coming out of the DAO, which was next to Tonson Airport, and a couple of helicopters were left coming out of the American Embassy with the Embassy Guard, the Marine Embassy Guard.
And how many people were on that chopper, and how many were supposed to be on it?
I think it was designed for about 18 and 19, and I had 40-something on it.
Wow.
And I don't know how we got out of there, but I tell you, we were bouncing out of there, and the North Vietnamese were pulling through the main gate, so we had no choice. We had to get out of there. The tanks were coming in, and that one helicopter was trying to get out.
Wow.
So that helicopter pilot, a good Marine captain, did a wonderful job getting us out of there.
Well, back to your second tour, where you were the recipient of the action. Tell us just the name of the battle, and so people can go look it up if they want to do some more research about that. And what was the strength of the organization against?
Well, the battle is called the Battle of Dong Hao, but the Pacific Village is called Dai Do. which is just north of the Quaviette, sort of between the Benahi and the Quaviette. And the location in Doncaster was a major supply base for Marines and Army up in the northern Acor area. Also the headquarters for the 3rd Marine Division and about 20 artillery batteries. So it was a major complex in supporting all that efforts, and which was really the hot area of Vietnam in the 68 time frame, shortly after Hue had ceased. And the thing we had the unfortunate fact, no one knew the size of the force, and no one even realized there was a force in there. But as we got involved in this fight after it was triggered, and we determined later we were up against a Marine battalion of about 800 Marines, was up against a North Vietnamese division of about 10,000 North Vietnamese. And I had a company, I had Echo Company, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, affectionately called the Magnificent Bastards. And I went into the fight with 185 Marines to secure a complex with about 100 bunkers. And only 35 of them walked away from that fight. The rest were either killed or wounded. And we got involved with a subsequent phase of the operation. They launched another attack. And this company came around my left flank and got about 250 yards from where we were located and got surrounded. And only 70 Marines with a young lieutenant in charge. And they, young lieutenant hollered, "Where's Echo?" And Echo didn't have very much left, except Livingston and a few guys. And I said to the Marines, I'm going, you guys, if you want to go. I know you've been in a hell of a fight. I'm not asking you to go. If you volunteer, you go. So we joined up in the fight and fought for about 2.5 hours in very close combat with them. And I finally got shot. I got shot with a 50 caliber machine gun and got a lot of shrapnel in me. So when I went down, I was the senior leader, so I called the battalion commander and said, "We need to pull back."
Right.
And even though we were still slugging it out with them.
Yeah.
But we did some serious damage on that North Vietnamese division, and I reflect back on the 18 and 19 and 20-year-old young Marines and how commanding they were on the battlefield and how brave they were. But I always say we had 81 killed, and that 81 didn't have a chance to be fathers and grandfathers.
Yeah.
So I got to remind the American people in our North Georgia family,
Right.
we've got people who are on markers here at this college. Remember those who gave it all.
Sure.
And I'll tell you what, that's the thing that makes you proud about the country, but it also makes you proud about North Georgia.
Sure. Well, now, as I recall, you wrote a book. I don't think it's still in print, but if somebody wanted to go find it on Amazon or so, what's the name of the book?
The book is called Noble Warrior, and it's primarily about the Battle of Dada, or the Battle of Donghua. And also there's a phrase in there about the evacuation of Saigon. And as all authors do, they have to have a couple chapters to pontificate. So I pontificated a little bit.
Well, after the war, you ended up obviously making a career. How many years were you in? And tell us a little about some of the other assignments you had.
Well, I was in just shy of 34 years, and I was blessed. I commanded everything from a platoon to a force, a platoon of 43 Marines up to a force of 100,000 people. And I was a platoon commander, company commander, battalion commander, regimental commander, division commander, and a force commander.
Wow.
And also I had my Marine barracks. I had a seagoing unit. I commanded everything you could command in the Marine Corps except the Marine Corps.
Right.
And they wanted to send me back to the Pentagon, and I said, it's probably time for me to do something else.
Yeah.
I had 2 years at the Pentagon, and then we were involved in the seizure of Panama back when that was going on. Right. And so I did that from the Pentagon, and also did some of the initial work for Desert Shield, Desert Storm. But I trained the Marines all winter who went to Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and it was such a wonderful trip. But good things have to end, and you have to look at other phases of their life. And so we stayed in New Orleans for about 10 more years after I got out.
Well, you mentioned that last night that you stayed there, and that what I was really impressed about, because I had been there, that you were one of the founders, along with Stephen Ambrose, of the World War II Museum. Yeah. How did that happen?
Well, Steve had been struggling for 4 years to try to get something going, and they were trying to put it out at Lake Pontchartrain, if you're familiar with the geography of New Orleans, and I kept telling him no one's coming out there. So we agreed to put it in the warehouse district, and I sort of took it over as the chairman of the board. I was the fourth chairman, and I went out and raised money, and we built the initial location with the Louisiana Pavilion, and then, you know what it is today, it's one of the largest museums.
It's a wonderful museum.
It is one of the probably most important museums in the country, and, probably, I think people admire it. I mean, it's right up there on admiration list about as high as you can go, and, I'm proud of it.
Well, there's tons of stuff to see there, but what I remember mostly was walking across the street and seeing the landing craft.
Yeah.
Those boats were made in the New Orleans area.
Well, I think it's 98 or 99% of the boats were made, what is called landing craft vehicle personnel, were made there where the University of New Orleans is.
Right.
As a matter of fact, one of the things we did is, we had a young Coast Guard guy who raised $100,000, and we couldn't find all the pieces, or we couldn't find a whole LCVP. So we found pieces here and there, and then went back to Greece to get some of the original lumber. And they actually, and a lot of these people were still old timers who had built these boats back during World War II. And we built one and lost it one day and decommissioned it the same day. And if you go down to New Orleans to the Louisiana Pavilion, you'll see that LCVP there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I encourage everyone to go down to.
Yeah, it's a wonderful museum. I would encourage people to do that too. John, tell us a little bit about how you met your wife and your family.
Well, my wife was a school teacher down in Beaufort, South Carolina, which is right next to Paris Island, the air station there. And all the young ladies who were single, most of them were school teachers. And,
Right.
A lot of them came down there where they made more money, which is probably about $1,000 a year because of the impact that they did was presented to Beaufort County because of the concentration of military people. And I met her in '66, and we dated for about 9 months and got married. And we've been married since '66, and we two beautiful daughters. One's named Kimberly, Naval Academy graduate, Medical University of South Carolina doctor. She's a mole surgeon now and lives in Charleston, South Carolina. My young one is Missy. She graduated from Tulane University in Villanova. She lives in, both of them live in South Carolina in Charleston. First time we had the family together in years.
Right.
So it's sort of a wonderful sort of experience to have all the family together.
How many grandchildren?
We got 3 grandkids, 2 granddaughters, and 1 grandson, and my oldest granddaughter's at Ithaca up in New York, and she's studying communications, and
Okay.
she's supposed to be a big movie star, so we'll see, and the other 2 are still in high school.
Now, Sarah was obviously a military wife, and tell me again, how many moves did you make?
We made 29 moves, and she said after we were fixing, and she wanted to leave New Orleans and get back with her mom, which we hadn't been with my mom, or her mom, so I said, you don't want to go back to Georgia? She says, I didn't hear you, I don't think. So she said we're going back to South Carolina, which was fine. It was her chance, and it was a good move for us. And we got out of New Orleans just 2 months before Katrina.
Wow.
And I always say she was the best business person in the house, so.
So you currently live in the Charleston, Mount Pleasant area?
Yeah, we live in the Charleston, Mount Pleasant area. We've been there since 2004.
Okay.
And I've been involved in banking, and involved somewhat with the Medal of Honor, which is located in Charleston. And
Well, I'd like for you to talk a little bit about the Medal of Honor Society and how many living members do you have, and you know what all.
Well, you know, there's a lot of connection to Charleston and the Medal of Honor because the Medal of Honor started during the Civil War, and obviously the Civil War started in Charleston. The first black recipient of the Medal of Honor is based on the movie Glory. It took place in Charleston.
Right.
And there's 3,000 plus recipients, and better than half of them were Civil War recipients. And the Vietnam, World War II, Korean generation specifically, the casualty rate on the recipients is about 60 to 70%. It means they were KIA, and there's only 60 recipients left, and there's only 8 Marines left, and I'm the senior Marine.
Right.
And we have, I think, 43 or 44 Army guys, and we got a few young guys. So we're sort of one of those outfits predicated on what happens certainly to the country, but as we see in the future, it's probably going to fade away except for a small number around 85. So the average age is about 82, 83.
Wow.
So there's only 60 of us left, but we still do what we can to interact with American people as long as our health stands up.
Right. And I know you've got a museum on the Yorktown.
Yes.
There.
And we rebuilt as the official museum for the Medal of Honor Society designation is aboard the aircraft carrier Yorktown. And it's not a big museum, but it is a wonderful museum. I encourage everyone to come. And it's been rebuilt, and we reopened it up about 6 months ago. It's a good journey, particularly for young people, to go through that museum.
Right. You have, the society has some programs though, don't you, in leadership and character and so forth?
What we do is, and we fund this and provide and train instructors. And Georgia is very much involved in it. It's called the Character Development Program. It's based on the history of some of the Medal of Honor recipients, but it's not focused on the combat piece. It's focused more on the character of the individual. It's very successful through the country, and Georgia has been a very big supporter of that, and the National Guard specifically.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you alluded to trying to speak. How many trips do you make to in behalf of the Medal of Honor Society and speak?
Well, because of the health, it's been a little bit lower the last 3 years. As I mentioned to you, I had some back issues, but you know, it's not uncommon to make 70 or 80 a year.
Right.
And probably more than that if you include all the local participation you have. Yeah.
Right.
But as long as you can do it, and you know, you can get up here to places like North Georgia and talk to the young people and just remind them and just tell them what your experiences have been and how your experience started here in North Georgia, which was a very important part of my speech last night.
Right.
And whoever ever thought I'd come back to North Georgia and be the guest speaker, be here being interviewed by you for this series.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's the most far-reaching thing from your mind back in those days. Yeah.
Well, the Medal of Honor Society, Association, whatever the right term is, I know it means a lot to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I'm pleased that it's continuing at this point. And not that we want more people killed to be in an action to be a recipient, but it's a wonderful organization.
Well, like I say, it represents a real cast of characters sometimes. And all of them are wonderful guys, and every one of them's got a different story, and every one of them's got a different personality. So you get around them, you just have fun being around the guys.
Y'all get
we have an annual convention.
Okay.
And it's yours in San Antonio.
Okay.
And we soon to have 3 museums. We have one up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is a great museum. Big museum is opening out in Arlington, Texas here, probably March or April of this coming year. And it's been sponsored by the owner of the Cowboys. He's been one of the principal donors. Right. And we have a museum certainly down in Charleston, aboard the Yorktown.
Yeah. Well, some of the things that came to light in some of the conversation that I was not aware, particularly I had not associated a Marine with being airborne and parachute. So I understand you've made over, what, 400 jumps or something?
I got, Ron counts them, he says that's what the count is. But I was assigned to the Army, which was a great tour for me. I spent 2 years down at Fort Benning, Georgia, which was called Fort Benning in those days, and I was the assistant Marine rep. I used to teach at the Army after school, and I was a liaison to all the other schools, the Ranger, Airborne, Scout Dogs, Pathfinders, and all the Navy and Marines came there. I sort of took care of them and made sure they were administratively supported.
Right.
And I had a good experience in every class we had Marines and Navy, and I'd go out and jump one. Yeah.
And that's in turn led to a little bit of back problems over the years.
I had a couple of bad landings. I had a lead drop zone, and I'm sure all the old airborne guys know where the lead drop zone is down in Fort Benning, Georgia.
Well, in conversation, I think most of our viewers probably know that the Primeral Ranger Camp is located just outside of Delonga, and you said you actually made a jump into
well, we used to deliver little messages up to the mountains to the Florida Ranger Camp.
Right.
And the first phase of it was down in Fort Benning, the second phase was in Delonga here at the mountain, then you go down to Eglin Air Force Base and do phase 3.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. Well, you've had quite a life, sir, and as we wrap up, I'd like to just give you the floor and let you talk about anything that you'd like to talk about that I haven't brought up. Anything as it relates to your family or the Marine Corps or North Georgia or Auburn or whatever you'd like to?
Well, I'll just sort of wrap it up this way, John, and say, my life really started really being defined based on my experiences in North Georgia. When I come aboard this campus, I remember all the things I learned about myself, how to grow, how to strengthen myself, how to prepare myself better, and how to work hard. And life is a gift, but life doesn't give you everything. You have to want to give yourself something, or you have to want to work hard. And those qualities of what make you successful either in the military, and I've been fairly successful in the military and the business world. That gift was given me in part by the staff, by the people I met and got to know in this experience here in North Georgia. So to all the people who are out there who have graduated from North Georgia, like I said, for me, it's been a remarkable journey, and it's 1 year that probably defined my life in terms of my character and what I had success in more than any 1 year of my life.
Great, great. General, we really appreciate you coming and being with us for the whole weekend.
Well, thank you very much.
Last night, you just gave a wonderful motivational speech.
Thank you.
And the cadets just lined up after it was over, wanting to have their picture made and shake your hand and asking you to sign their knife sheaths and a little bit of everything. But thank you so much for coming and being with us. It's been an honor. And
you've been a great host.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and I tell you what.
Have a good trip back.
I know. One thing I love about you, John, is your attention to detail. You're worse than I am. And I love that. I'm an attention to detail guy. And you made the journey just really worthwhile. Thank you.
Great.
And you're a beautiful bride.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that